Welcome back. Today we are making this beautiful and delicious layered spice cake. I began by making my spice cake batter, which the full recipe is up on Chelsweets.com, and I've included the link in the video description. Once I'd poured that into my prepared pans, I baked them in a preheated 350-degree oven for about 32 minutes. Once my cake layers had fully cooled, I used a serrated knife to trim off any caramelization around the sides and also to level the tops of the cake. They bake pretty flat, but it's easier to assemble a layer cake if the layers really are perfectly flat, so I recommend leveling them if you can. Trimming the sides of the cake is also optional. I just get a lot of caramelization because I have an old gas oven that doesn't bake super evenly. Next, I made my cinnamon cream cheese frosting, and then it was time to assemble our cake. I added a dab of buttercream to my cake board to help that first cake layer stick in place, and then I spread a thick, even layer of our frosting on top of my cake layer. I like to do this with a large offset spatula just because it makes it easier to get a really nice even layer. As you can see, my cake layers also are a tiny bit chilled, and this makes it a lot easier to stack and frost your cake because it helps your cake layers stay in place and helps the buttercream between the cake layers firm up a little bit so they don't slide. I just pop my cake layers in the freezer for about 15 minutes until they're cold to the touch, and then I know they're ready to go. Next, I covered the cake in a thin crumb coat just to make sure that we locked in all those crumbs and none of them would get into our second, thicker layer of frosting that we added next. I chilled my crumb coat in the freezer for about 10 minutes, and then I set to work on the second, thicker layer of frosting. You really need a decent amount of buttercream to get a nice smooth finish, so don't be afraid to add a lot. You will end up scraping some of it off as you smooth it. I like to get the top edge nice and sharp by using a small offset spatula and dragging any overhanging frosting kind of into the center, just like this. Next, I used some gel food coloring to color a little bit of frosting different fall shades, including yellows, oranges, and reds. You really need only about a half a cup of each color to do this. As you're going to see, this is just going to be a nice little accent that we add around the sides of the cake. I added each color into a piping bag, but you can also just add dabs using a small offset spatula. Either way, you want to spread little dabs of colorful frosting up the sides of your cake that you've chilled in the freezer for about 10 minutes. At this point in time, I felt like my streaks kind of looked like turkey feathers, so I decided to blend them together using my offset spatula and just going over each little streak. It gave the cake a really beautiful, almost like fiery look that I loved. Once I was happy with the sides of the cake, I took my leftover colorful frosting, added it into one piping bag fit with a Wilton 1M frosting tip, and piped some generous swirls on top of the cake. As you do this, you want to make sure you're holding the piping bag in the same orientation so that the color pattern stays the same all the way around the cake. I then chilled the cake one final time in the freezer to help those swirls firm up because I wanted to paint a little bit of edible gold paint on them just to really make them pop. I like to use edible art gold paint, but you can also make your own by mixing together a little bit of vodka or clear liquor with some gold luster dust. I also painted a little bit of gold down in the streaks to tie the whole cake together. This cake was almost too pretty to cut into, but I had already eaten the cake tops and I knew it was delicious, and it just had to be done. You can see how soft and tender those cake layers look, and I wish you all could have a slice. Don't forget, if you do want to make this cake, you can find the recipe in the video description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.